There are rock stars who go out in flames, and then there's Ozzy Osbourne, a man who didn't just die, he performed his death. Because what if I told you that Ozzy's final days weren't random or tragic, but scripted? That every moment, from his last concert to his final Instagram post, was part of a carefully orchestrated farewell, a finale so detailed, so symbolic, and so hauntingly perfect, it could have only come from the mind of a man who knew the end was near and wanted to control it. This wasn't just the death of a legend, it was the closing chapter of a story he'd been writing for decades. A man who had lived through chaos, addiction, and madness finally found clarity and used it to stage one final performance. He called it Back to the Beginning. But what Ozzy didn't say out loud is that it would also be the end. And now, the clues he left behind are being uncovered, one by one. July 5th, 2025, Villa Park in Birmingham. Over 40,000 fans screamed as the Prince of Darkness returned to the stage for one last time. Ozzy Osbourne, battling Parkinson's for over 20 years, sat on a black leather throne, his legs too weak to stand, but his voice, still ferocious, still unmistakable. They called it Back to the Beginning, a final reunion of the original Black Sabbath lineup. And if that name sounds symbolic, it was. But no one realized just how much at the time. Metallica, Guns N' Roses, and Alice in Chains all opened the show, but everyone was there for Ozzy. And when he sang War Pigs, Iron Man, Paranoid, it didn't sound like nostalgia. It sounded like a man writing his own eulogy. The show raised $190 million. Every penny was donated to children's hospitals, hospices, and Cure Parkinson's. That wasn't just generosity. That was closure. A man settling his accounts. A man saying goodbye. 17 days later, he was gone. In the early hours of July 22nd, just hours before the world learned he had passed, Ozzy posted a quiet photo on Instagram. It showed a backstage door with his name taped to it, a photo from that farewell concert. But the caption said everything, Back to the Beginning, the final show. At the time, it looked like a nostalgic post, but now, it reads like a coded message, his final farewell, hidden in plain sight. Even his interviews in those final weeks had a strange tone. I felt lucky to be alive, he said, past tense, not feel but felt, like he already knew his time was up. This wasn't a coincidence, it was calculated. In the weeks before his death, Ozzy's schedule wasn't chaotic, it was focused, intentional. He spent time with each of his 6 children. He arranged one-on-one moments with his grandchildren. He reconnected with bandmates, long-lost friends, people he hadn't seen in decades. And then there was Kelly. Immediately after the farewell concert, Kelly Osbourne's boyfriend, Sid Wilson, proposed to her. Not days later, not weeks, minutes after the show ended. Why? Because Ozzy made sure it happened that way. He wanted to see his daughter's joy one last time. He knew he wouldn't make it to the wedding, but he'd be there for the moment she said yes. The photos from that night show Ozzy glowing, not just from the performance, but from witnessing something deeply personal. And it wasn't random. Everything was timed. Behind the curtain, one person had seen the signs, Sharon. She'd watched Ozzy slip into what he called Doomtown, a mental state of pure despair where his body betrayed him every day. 6 years in bed, 6 years of surgeries, tremors, and isolation. Sharon knew he was fading, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. So she gave him one last mission, one reason to fight. She told him, one more concert, one last blaze of glory. It wasn't easy. Doctors warned against it. His body was failing. But Ozzy insisted. He demanded the show happen, not for the fans, but for himself. And Sharon made it happen. The tour, the lineup, the donations. She didn't just plan a concert. She helped Ozzy plan his final act. They'd talked about death before. In her memoir, she revealed a pact. If either of them developed dementia, they'd choose assisted exit in Switzerland. Ozzy didn't have dementia, but he had the same mindset. He wasn't going to let death surprise him. He was going to meet it head-on. For decades, Ozzy spoke about his dual identity. The wild man on stage was Ozzy, but offstage, he was John Osbourne, soft-spoken, thoughtful, private. And in those final months, it was John who took over. This wasn't Ozzy thrashing through chaos. This was John planning his own ending, quietly, carefully, with precision. The farewell concert wasn't Ozzy's ego trip. It was John's goodbye. The $190 million in donations wasn't rockstar generosity. It was a man giving everything back, to the children, to the sick, to those walking the path he had. Every moment was deliberate, every gesture meaningful. This was a man thinking far beyond legacy. He was thinking about peace. The world saw Ozzy as unhinged, biting bats, mumbling on TV, stumbling through interviews. But that was only half the story. Ozzy, or rather John, was sharp, strategic, brilliant in his own way. He turned chaos into a career, madness into money, controversy into brand identity. And now, he was doing the same with death. The farewell concert wasn't booked because he was dying. It was booked because he wanted to control how it ended. The donations weren't an afterthought. They were part of the plan. Even the family moments weren't spontaneous. They were milestones on a farewell checklist. His final weeks weren't a decline. They were a production. As the concert ended, Ozzy said something that felt oddly final. "Thank you. God bless you all. That's good night. Not see you next time. Not until we meet again. Just good night." And when the news of his death broke, his family didn't scramble. They didn't need to. Everything had been prepared. His will was updated. His funeral was planned. His final wishes were documented. His family had been given time to say goodbye. Even the statement they released felt rehearsed, calm, composed, respectful, because they had known. He had prepared them. Tributes flooded in from across the world. Metallica, Elton John, the Rolling Stones, Pearl Jam, even Donny Osmond posted a heartfelt message. But what stunned everyone was how complete it all seemed. The tributes weren't for a man taken too soon. They were for someone who had orchestrated his departure like a closing number, because that's exactly what it was. Ozzy had lived his life on stage, and he wasn't about to let someone else write his final act. He took the pen. He wrote the ending. He made death his encore. He used his voice until the very last show. And while millions will remember that voice, those who paid attention will remember something else, the mind that planned it all, and the heart that made sure his final moments weren't about him, but about everyone he could still help. Ozzy Osbourne didn't die in chaos. He died in control, and that may be the most shocking thing of all.